At 39 years old, Marcus Holloway had already chosen how his life would end. Not with a gun, not with pills, not with a dramatic goodbye note, but with something far quieter. He chose to stop trying. He chose a date, a final birthday, a silent deadline 40. That was the age where effort would officially expire. If nothing changed by then, he would let himself fade. And the cruel irony, life was about to test him harder than it ever had. Every weekday morning, Marcus woke up at exactly 5:30 a.m., not because he wanted to, because his body no longer asked him what he wanted. Same alarm tone, same ceiling fan humming above him, same gray light creeping through the blinds. He lay there for a moment each morning, staring upward, feeling the familiar weight settle on his chest. Not pain, not panic, just heaviness. At 39, Marcus Holloway had what people called a stable life, a mid-level corporate job in compliance, a two-bedroom apartment he barely used, a reliable sedan parked downstairs, health insurance, retirement contributions, predictable weekends. On paper, he was doing fine. Inside, he felt like a man who had already attended his own funeral. No wife, no children, no real friendships left, only routines, only obligations, only the quiet knowledge that he was still breathing, but no longer alive. 6 years earlier, on his 33rd birthday, Marcus had made a promise, not out loud, not in writing, just a whisper to himself in the dark. That night, he sat alone on the edge of his bed, cake untouched on the kitchen counter, phone silent. Another relationship had ended that week. Another promotion had gone to someone younger, louder, more visible. He stared at his hands and said, "If nothing changes by 40, I'm done." He didn't mean suicide. He didn't mean something worse. He meant giving up internally while continuing to exist physically. No more dreaming, no more risking, no more hoping life might surprise him. 40 would be the age he officially stopped expecting anything more. And once that switch flipped, there would be no reason to turn it back on. There was a time Marcus didn't feel like this. At 16, he wrote short stories in spiral notebooks. At 20, a college professor once pulled him aside and said, "You notice things other people miss. Don't waste that." At 25, Marcus believed words could change people. He believed stories mattered. But belief doesn't pay rent. Belief doesn't cancel debt. Belief doesn't quiet fear at 2 a.m. Slowly, practicality took over. Writing became something he'd get back to someday, then something he felt embarrassed about, and something he avoided entirely. Dreams didn't disappear all at once. They eroded. When Marcus was 32, his mother died in her sleep. No illness, no warning, just gone. He had spoken to her a week earlier. She sounded tired but warm. Her last words to him were simple. "Promise me you won't live scared." At the funeral, Marcus stood beside her casket and nodded silently. He broke that promise the very next day, and every day after that. 2 years later, his marriage ended. Not with shouting, not with betrayal, with exhaustion. His wife sat across from him at the kitchen table and said gently, "You're here, but you're not with me. And I can't keep waiting for you to wake up." Marcus didn't argue, because the truth was devastatingly clear. He didn't know how to wake up anymore. She packed her things. He helped carry the boxes. They hugged once at the door, and that was it. The years that followed blurred together. Marcus stopped creating anything that didn't have a deadline, stopped planning beyond the next work week, stopped imagining alternative futures. Weekdays were tolerable, weekends were unbearable. Holidays felt like reminders of what he had lost rather than celebrations. At work, he smiled on cue. At home, he stared at walls. He cried only in the shower. where the sound of water made it easier to pretend it wasn't happening. This wasn't sadness, this was resignation. On the morning of his 39th birthday, Marcus stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The man staring back looked older than he remembered. Lines around the eyes, a posture shaped by years of quiet defeat. He whispered, 1 year left. Not as a threat, not as a cry for help, as a fact. 3 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday evening, Marcus did something unremarkable that would change everything. He took the wrong train home. No intuition, no sign, just a missed platform and a quiet decision not to care enough to fix it. The train stalled between stations, lights dimmed, passengers sighed. That's when Marcus noticed the man sitting across from him. Late 40s, calloused hands, eyes that had seen loss and survived it. The man smiled softly and said, "Funny how the wrong train sometimes takes us exactly where we need to be." Marcus didn't respond, but something about the sentence lodged itself deep inside his chest. The man introduced himself as Caleb, a retired carpenter, widowed, volunteered teaching woodworking to troubled teens. They talked for 7 minutes about nothing important and everything. Before stepping off the train, Caleb said, "Whatever you're running from, it won't chase you forever, but your regrets will." Marcus smiled politely and forgot the man's name by morning, but not the words. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Instead of scrolling endlessly, he reached into a drawer and pulled out an old notebook, dusty, forgotten. Inside were unfinished stories, ideas abandoned mid-sentence, dreams he once believed deserved time. His hands shook. For the first time in years, he felt something sharp, pain, and strangely relief. 2 months later, chest pressure sent Marcus to a clinic. Routine check, nothing dramatic. The doctor looked at his chart and said, "Physically, you're fine, but chronic stress like yours, it eats people alive quietly." Marcus asked, "How much time do I have?" The doctor replied, "More than you think if you decide to live it." That same week, an email appeared from an unfamiliar address. Subject line, "Still running from something." Inside, "Saw you on the train weeks ago. Something told me to find you. If you ever want to talk, really talk, come by the youth workshop this Saturday. No pressure. Caleb." Marcus stared at the screen. He almost deleted it. Saturday came with rain. The alarm rang. Marcus lay still, whispering, "Why go? None of this matters anyway." And yet, his feet touched the floor. Not from hope, from curiosity. The workshop was in an old warehouse. Painted walls, loud laughter. Inside were broken teenagers and Caleb, not teaching furniture, teaching belief. After class, Caleb handed Marcus a coffee and said, "You look like a man who stopped believing life could surprise him." Marcus replied, "I'm just tired." Caleb asked calmly, "What are you actually tired of losing?" And just like that, the armor cracked. That question didn't sound cruel. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it followed Marcus all the way home. What are you actually tired of losing? Not tired of work, not tired of people, not tired of stress, tired of losing. That night, Marcus lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment. The way Caleb hadn't rushed the question, the way he didn't try to fix anything afterward, the way he simply let the silence do the work. Marcus hated that because silence always told the truth. Marcus didn't return to the workshop the following Saturday, or the one after that. He told himself it was just curiosity, nothing more. But on the third week, another email arrived. No subject line this time, just one sentence. "I knew you won't come back right away. People like you never do." Marcus stared at the screen longer than he wanted to admit. He typed the reply, deleted it, typed again, Finally, he sent, "What do you mean, people like me?" The response came 10 minutes later. "People who learned early how to disappear in plain sight." Marcus felt exposed. They met at a quiet diner near the workshop. No speeches, no therapy language, just coffee and silence. Finally, Marcus asked, "Why me?" Caleb didn't answer immediately. He watched Marcus carefully, the posture, the guarded tone, the way his eyes avoided contact when emotions came close. Then he said, "Because you didn't complain." Marcus frowned. Caleb continued, "You didn't act angry or bitter or dramatic. You sat there like a man who had already accepted loss as permanent." Marcus swallowed. Caleb leaned back. "I know that look," he said, "because I wore it once." Caleb didn't tell his full story. Not then. He only said this: "I had a life that ended once, not legally, not publicly, but internally." He paused. "When you stop believing the future can surprise you, you start dying early." Marcus listened, not because he believed him, but because it sounded dangerously familiar. Caleb didn't invite Marcus to volunteer. He didn't offer advice. Instead, he said, "I want you to sit in the back of the room during the workshops. Don't help, don't talk, just watch." Marcus laughed quietly. "Why?" Caleb replied, "Because you're not ready to be useful yet, but you are ready to observe." Something about that felt insulting and accurate. Marcus agreed. Over the next few weeks, Marcus sat quietly in the back. He watched boys with criminal records learn patience through sanding wood. He watched girls with anger issues learn precision through measurement. He watched Caleb correct mistakes without humiliation. No yelling, no savior complex, just presence. What unsettled Marcus most wasn't the kids, it was himself. He noticed how alive he felt watching transformation happen in front of him, and how empty he felt when he returned home afterward. One night, a teenage boy named Ivan stormed out of the workshop. Marcus followed him outside without thinking. The boy shouted, "Why bother learning this? None of it matters." Marcus froze because those words sounded like his own thoughts, spoken out loud. Ivan looked at him and snapped, "What are you staring at?" Marcus surprised himself by answering honestly, "Someone I used to be." The boy didn't respond, but he didn't walk away either. The next week, Caleb handed Marcus a stack of old notebooks. "Read these," he said. They were journals written by former students. Some had succeeded, some had disappeared, some had failed hard. Real outcomes, no inspirational filtering. Marcus stayed up until 3 a.m. reading them. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't numb, it was engaged. At the end of the month, Caleb asked Marcus the same question again. "What are you tired of losing?" This time, Marcus answered, "Myself." The word came out shaky. Caleb nodded. "That's the most dangerous loss," he said, "because no one else can notice it for you." Then Caleb said something unexpected. "There's a reason I'm careful about who I let close to this place." Marcus waited. Caleb continued, "Because people who are half gone either heal or they collapse." He looked directly at Marcus. "I won't carry you if you fail." Marcus felt a chill. This wasn't mentorship. This was a test. That night, Marcus marked the calendar. 8 months until 40. The number no longer felt abstract. It felt close, uncomfortably close. He realized something terrifying. For the first time in years, he didn't want the countdown to end. Without telling anyone, Marcus opened a new document. He didn't call it a story, didn't call it writing. He just typed observations, faces, moments, fragments. No ambition, just truth. The words came slowly, but they came. When Caleb saw the notebook weeks later, he didn't praise it. He said, "If you keep doing this, it's going to hurt." Marcus asked, "How?" Caleb answered, "Because creating again will remind you of everything you buried to survive." Marcus closed the notebook and nodded. He already felt it. That night, Marcus nearly deleted everything he wrote. The voice, old, returned. This is pointless. You're too late. You missed your moment. He hovered over the delete key, then remembered the question. What are you actually tired of losing? His hand moved away. The next morning, Caleb said one final thing before Marcus left the workshop. People think the opposite of giving up is motivation. He shook his head. It's responsibility. Marcus didn't understand yet, but the word followed him. Responsibility. Marcus didn't tell anyone he was writing again. Not Caleb, not coworkers, not himself, not out loud, because saying it would make it real, and real things could fail. He wrote late at night, after work, after exhaustion had already taken its share. Not stories yet, scenes, observations, moments from the workshop. A boy sanding a table leg until his hands shook. A girl mirroring twice because she was afraid to be wrong again. Caleb correcting mistakes without raising his voice. Marcus wasn't trying to inspire, he was trying to understand. One night, Caleb sat beside him while Marcus wrote. Didn't read the page, didn't interrupt. After a long silence, Caleb said, You're circling something. Marcus didn't look up. Circling what? A reason, Caleb replied. You just don't trust it yet. That sentence stayed with Marcus longer than it should have. A week later, Caleb made a suggestion Marcus didn't expect. You should read one of these aloud, he said, tapping the notebook. Marcus laughed immediately. No. Caleb didn't argue, just said, not to the kids, to the staff. Private. Marcus's stomach tightened. Reading meant exposure. Exposure meant judgment. Judgment meant confirmation of everything he feared. I'm not ready, Marcus said. Caleb nodded. Then you'll never be. The reading happened on a Tuesday night. 7 people in the room. Folded chairs, cheap coffee, fluorescent lights. Marcus's hands shook as he opened the notebook. He didn't introduce himself as a writer. He just said, This is something I noticed. He read for 4 minutes. No dramatic pauses, no performance, just truth. When he finished, the room stayed quiet. Too quiet. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Then one staff member said softly, That sounded like my brother. Another whispered, That sounded like me. No applause, something better. Recognition. That night, Marcus walked home slower than usual. A thought crept in, subtle, terrifying. What if this matters? He hated that thought, because if it mattered, it could fail publicly, and public failure hurts more than private numbness. 2 weeks later, Caleb crossed a line Marcus wasn't ready for. He submitted one of Marcus's pieces to a small local storytelling event without asking. When Marcus found out, he exploded. You had no right, he snapped. Caleb didn't flinch. You were never going to do it yourself, he said calmly. Marcus didn't speak to him for days, but the email confirmation sat unread in Marcus's inbox, waiting. The event was held in a converted backstore. 40 people, low stage, open mic. Marcus almost didn't go. He stood outside for 10 minutes, watching people walk in. Normal people, confident people, people who hadn't quit on themselves. He whispered, This is stupid, then walked inside anyway. When his name was called, Marcus froze. His mouth went dry. His vision narrowed. He started reading. 30 seconds in, he lost his place. His voice cracked. Someone in the audience coughed. Another shifted in their chair. Marcus felt the old voice return. You don't belong here. He rushed the ending. The applause was polite, short, not cruel, but not validating either. Marcus stepped off the stage feeling exposed and small. He didn't wait to talk to anyone. Didn't look for Caleb. He walked home in the cold, replaying every mistake, the pauses, the shaking voice, the lack of impact. By the time he reached his apartment, The verdict was clear. This was a mistake. Marcus opened his laptop, opened the folder, hovered over delete. The countdown voice returned louder than ever. You tried. It didn't work. That's your answer. His finger hovered, then his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You don't know me, but your story felt like someone finally said what I couldn't. Marcus stared at the screen, read it again, then again. The next day, Caleb said only one thing about the event. If you quit now, you prove the voice right. Marcus snapped back. I embarrassed myself. Caleb nodded. Good. Now it's real. A week later, the event organizer emailed Marcus. They wanted him to submit another piece for a slightly larger venue. Marcus laughed when he read it, not from joy, from disbelief. Failure hadn't ended him, it had introduced him. That night, Marcus checked the calendar again. 6 months left. For the first time, the number scared him, not because he wanted it to end, but because he wasn't sure how much could change before it arrived. Marcus realized something unsettling. Hope hurt more than despair, because hope demanded action, consistency, risk, and he wasn't sure yet if he was strong enough for that. Before leaving the workshop that night, Caleb said quietly, "The first time you step back into the light, it burns." Marcus nodded. He was already feeling it. The moment Marcus began showing up consistently, life did something cruel. It noticed him. And when life notices you after a long absence, it doesn't reward you. It tests whether you deserve to stay. Marcus kept writing, not because he believed in himself, but because stopping felt worse. Every night after work, every Saturday morning before the workshop, sometimes in short bursts, sometimes staring at a blank page for an hour. The stories weren't about hope. They were about men who stayed too long in jobs they hated, about parents who loved but didn't understand, about the quiet violence of giving up slowly. Caleb never edited his work, only asked one question after each piece. Is this honest or just safe? Marcus hated that question because honesty cost more. One morning, Marcus opened his inbox at work and saw an unfamiliar subject line. Interested in your work, small commission. He assumed it was spam. It wasn't. A local nonprofit had heard him read at the bookstore event. They wanted a short written piece for their annual fundraiser. Paid. Not much, barely symbolic, but paid. Marcus read the email 3 times, then closed it, then opened it again. He didn't feel joy. He felt fear, because payment meant expectation. He told Caleb that night. Caleb smiled, but only slightly. Good, he said. Now the pressure changes. Marcus frowned. Isn't this a good thing? Caleb replied carefully. Money doesn't ruin people. Meaning does. And now your meaning has a receipt. Marcus didn't fully understand. He would. Marcus said yes to the commission, then panicked. He rewrote the piece 12 times, hated every version, felt like a fraud charging money for words. The deadline crept closer, so did the voice. You don't deserve this. They'll see through you. On the 3rd night, without sleep, Marcus almost emailed an apology and backed out. Instead, he sent the piece unfinished and waited to be exposed. The response came 2 days later. They loved it. They asked if he'd consider more work in the future. Marcus stared at the screen. This wasn't validation. It was escalation. Work became harder. Writing took energy he didn't have. The workshop demanded presence. His corporate job demanded overtime. Marcus began showing up tired everywhere, snapping at coworkers, arriving late to the workshop, missing small moments Caleb noticed, didn't comment at first. One evening, Marcus skipped the workshop entirely, didn't text, didn't call. He stayed home to finish another paid piece. When he returned to the next week, One of the teens asked, "You quit too?" It was meant as a joke. It landed like an accusation. After class, Caleb pulled Marcus aside. "You are drifting," he said calmly. Marcus bristled. "I am trying to survive," he replied. "This matters." Caleb held his gaze. "So do they." Silence followed, heavy, unforgiving. That night, Marcus lay awake. A realization surfaced, quiet and dangerous. If he succeeded, he might lose the very thing that saved him. And if he failed, at least the story would end cleanly. The countdown voice returned, not louder, but sharper. "You're running out of time." Marcus crossed another date off the calendar. 4 months left. 40 wasn't abstract anymore. It was approaching with intention. He wondered, if this is the best year of my life, why does it still hurt so much? A coworker discovered Marcus's writing, shared it casually in the office, mocked it gently, not cruelly, worse, dismissively. Marcus laughed along, then went to the bathroom and stared at himself in the mirror. The old version was still there, waiting. 2 weeks later, another email arrived. A publishing assistant, small digital platform, interested in compiling real-life narratives, unpaid but visible. Exposure. Marcus forwarded it to Caleb immediately. Caleb replied with one sentence: "Visibility without foundation breaks people." Marcus didn't reply. For the first time in years, Marcus stood at a fork. One path led outward, faster, louder, riskier. The other inward, slower, quieter, heavier. Both demanded something he feared: commitment. Marcus lay awake that night and asked himself, "If I only have months left, do I want to be known or useful?" He didn't have the answer yet, but the question wasn't going away.